You are not in control, but your brain wants you to think you are. It wants you to believe that the choices you make are entirely yours, that your future bends to your will, that you are the master of your fate. This comforting illusion may be the biggest lie your mind tells you every single day. Leo Tolstoy once wrote, "The most difficult subjects can be explained to the most slow-witted man if he has not formed any idea of them already. But the simplest thing cannot be made clear to the most intelligent man if he is firmly persuaded that he knows already." And so it is with control. We think we know it. We think we have it. But what if control itself is just a story? A myth woven by the mind to help us feel safe in a world that is anything but. In this series, we're going to rip the mask off the illusion of control. We'll explore the psychology behind it, the philosophical roots of why we crave it, and the hidden costs of clinging to a power we never truly had. We'll draw from Jung's ideas about the unconscious, from Nietzsche's view of chaos, from modern behavioral science, and most importantly, we'll hold a mirror to ourselves. Because to awaken is not to gain control. It is to finally understand how little we ever had. We grow up believing that we choose our jobs, our partners, our thoughts, our beliefs. But what if choice is just a narrative, something the mind creates after the fact? Neuroscientific research has shown that decisions are often made by our brain before we are even consciously aware of them. Studies by Benjamin Libet and others show that the brain signals intent milliseconds before a person makes a conscious choice. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This suggests that many of our choices may be nothing more than automated responses from a complex network of memories, emotions, and unconscious drives. We think we are the driver, but we're more often the passenger, watching the wheel turn and convincing ourselves we're steering. In this section, we explore the neuroscience behind decision-making, the illusion of rational thought, why we rewrite our own stories to make sense of actions we never truly chose. Real freedom may not come from choosing. It may come from real. Imagine a puppet that believes it controls its own strings. That's us, most of the time. We walk through life making choices, assuming agency, speaking of free will and determination. But all the while, invisible forces, our biology, our upbringing, our culture, our traumas, pull the strings. Niccolò Machiavelli once wrote, "Men in general judge more from appearances than from reality. All men have eyes, but few have the gift of penetration." We live by appearances, especially the appearance of control. In this chapter, we explore how environment and memory shape our decisions, why trauma silently dictates reactions we think are normal, how culture programs our behavior before we even know we're alive, and most of all, how unaware we are of all of it. But awareness is the first crack in the illusion. Here's the truth. You don't have to be in complete control to start reclaiming your agency. You just have to start seeing what's really pulling your strings. Pause this video. Write down 3 big decisions you've made in the past year. Now ask yourself, how many of those were influenced by fear, by habit, by what others expected? Drop one of them in the comments. Let's open the discussion. Let's watch ourselves so we can stop being puppets and start being participants. The human brain is a master illusionist, not just fooling others, but fooling you about yourself. Part 4. The mind's defense system. How we fool ourselves. It protects you from pain, from trauma, from chaos, but in doing so, it often traps you in a fantasy. Freud called these defenses mechanisms, and they're still central in modern psychology. Denial, projection, rationalization, suppression. Each one is a clever way your mind keeps you safe, but also keeps you blind. Imagine this. You avoid taking risks because you prefer stability. That sounds rational, But what if it's just your fear of failure wearing a nice mask? You dismiss someone's criticism because they're just jealous. That sounds empowering. But what if they're right, and you just can't face your own flaws? Jung believed that the shadow, the rejected, unconscious part of ourselves, uses defense to hide, to protect itself from exposure. And this is where the illusion of control thrives. If we really had control, we wouldn't need to lie to ourselves so much. In this chapter, we explore the most common mental defense mechanisms, why the illusion of control depends on self-deception, how to recognize when you're explaining, not choosing. Self-awareness begins when we realize how often we are protecting ourselves from truths that could set us free. Society doesn't just tolerate the illusion of control, it profits from it. From political campaigns to corporate branding, the world around us constantly sells the idea that we are in charge. You choose your leaders. You build your future. You are free to buy, think, live however you want. But as Noam Chomsky put it, the smart way to keep people passive and obedient is to strictly limit the spectrum of acceptable opinion, but allow very lively debate within that spectrum. In other words, you can pick your flavor, but only from the menu someone else wrote. This is control disguised as freedom, a curated illusion that makes you feel empowered, while keeping the real levers of power far from reach. Governments offer elections but suppress choices. Algorithms offer content but suppress awareness. Brands offer identity but suppress authenticity. And all the while, we cheer, believing we're in control. In this section, we explore how media and marketing construct pseudo-freedom, why systems depend on perceived autonomy to function, the connection between obedience and illusion. True agency begins when we question the system, not just ourselves. We crave control because the alternative, chaos, is terrifying. We cling to routines, rules, roles, not because they're true, but because they're safe. And safety, even when built on illusion, is intoxicating. Carl Jung argued that the desire for control is rooted in the ego's fear of disintegration. The self, when faced with uncertainty, would rather accept a lie that makes sense than a truth that shatters its foundation. So we lie to ourselves about who we are, about why we do things, about what we really want. We say, "I'm doing this because it's right," when we're really doing it because it's familiar. We say, "I had no choice," when in reality the choices were just scary. The illusion of control acts like a warm blanket over the cold truth of randomness. In this section, we explore why the ego prefers illusion to uncertainty, how fear shapes our sense of control, the danger of mistaking comfort for truth. Comfort is not clarity, and clarity often feels like discomfort. What happens when the illusion starts to crack? When we stop pretending we're in control, what's left? Awareness, not control, not certainty, not safety, just awareness. Jung wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." Because facing the truth about who we are and how little we truly command requires extraordinary courage. But here's the twist. Awareness doesn't make us weaker. It makes us more awake. When we understand our limitations, we can navigate with humility instead of arrogance. When we know how easily we're manipulated, we can start to resist it. When we stop chasing control, we start building clarity. This part explores what true self-awareness looks like and what it isn't. How ego fights awakening. Why seeing clearly is more powerful than being in charge. There's a quiet power in saying, "I don't know," in admitting, "I was wrong," in realizing that letting go of control is the beginning of freedom. This is the mirror. Will you look into it? If the illusion of control is a lie, what replaces it? The answer isn't chaos, it's presence. When we give up the obsession with controlling everything, We don't collapse into confusion. We step into a new kind of clarity, one based not on certainty, but on responsiveness, on being awake to what is. This is what Eastern philosophies have taught for centuries, that freedom is not found in domination, but in surrender. Lao Tzu wrote, "By letting it go, it all gets done. The world is won by those who let it go." This part explores the difference between control and agency, why surrender is not weakness, but awareness, how to navigate life when you stop needing to predict it. Letting go doesn't mean you stop acting. It means you start responding instead of reacting, listening instead of assuming, moving with life instead of against it. You were never supposed to control everything. Your power was never in domination. It was in perception, in presence, in awareness. This is the paradox. When you finally stop trying to control your life, you actually begin to live it. The fool, the one who lets go, who questions the rules, who dares to say, "I don't know," is not the weakest. He is the most free. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." And to find your why, you must strip away all the false hows that control sold you. This is your call. Share this video with one person who's obsessed with control. Then do something today without planning it. Feel what it's like to move without a map. Let go. Watch what happens. Because this isn't the end, it's the beginning.